above. But I'm actually picking a team that I think has gotten kind of dogged and has gotten kind of a mediocre grade across the board from a lot of different analyst groups. But when I sit back and I just look at what they did in the first 5 rounds, I give them like a standing O, because I think for what their team needs and where they're at right now, I think they got a lot of talent and a lot of starters for many years to come. And that's the Detroit Lions. They're in our division. Obviously, this is a very weird year that we're moving into in the NFC North. We've got Aaron Rodgers as a Jet, the Vikings. We don't know if this is Kirk Cousins last year, what's happening with a lot of their premier players from years past. Chicago, we're still in a rebuild. We're still trying to figure out, the building blocks for the years to come. And Detroit kind of falls in this really right position of having a really solid roster and then just kind of building upon it. And they got dogged in their first round because of positional value and positional kind of scarcity, or basically like how we think you should draft in the first round. And to me, I mean, they walk away with Jahmyr Gibbs as their new running back one. I'm hearing a lot of comps too, like you were saying, for McIntosh as an Alvin Kamara type. Gibbs, I think, is that kind of player and, could definitely add a lot of, octane to that offense just in their passing game. And, hopefully, and you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor, but just like as far as his ability to rush or get between the tackles, I still think he's probably competent of doing so. But anyways, correct me if I'm wrong there. But so to get a top 2 back, I think off the bat, obviously people don't like that because they don't like seeing a lot of running backs go in the first round. And then to add also the top linebacker as well, and Jack Campbell, guy's got a lot of size, range. Again, gets slammed because it's a linebacker in the first round. But I guess I'm caveating a lot of this because I think in the next couple of rounds to go, Sam Laporta at tight end, who's arguably a top 3 tight end, physical guy, can go up and grab the catch. Brian Branch, who I think a lot of people had in their first round, falls to them as their new top safety. I mean, a guy who can really tackle, probably the best nickel, cover safety in this entire draft as well. And then to go, into the next round and grab Hendon Hooker as possibly, your quarterback of the future. I mean, I think Jared Goff has done a serviceable job with the Lions, especially last year. I thought he stepped up a lot. I think he has 2 years remaining left on his contract, but again, Hendon Hooker was being talked about as being a first-round talent. I think he's got the right mix of passing, rushing ability, and the modern NFL to kind of maybe slot in there in a year or two, maybe learn, behind a guy like Jared Goff and the Lions. But to me, I took a step back because I know, we go through these drafts, we listen to a lot of analysts, we listen to, how they want to put it, their big boards together, and, linebackers will never make the first round, this or that, or, running back going in the first round is kind of crazy in this and then in the other. But I'm kind of like, you just take a step back and you look at the first 5 guys they started their draft off. You can make an argument that these guys are within the top 2 to 3 in their position for their group. And it's just like, I think that's an amazing draft to add on to, this Lions roster who, they grabbed David Montgomery. They ended up, grabbing 2 starting cornerbacks. They've got CJ Gardner-Johnson at safety. They're bringing back Aiden Hutchinson. There's a lot of other, avenues they probably could have gone down with this draft, but overall, I think they've been getting dogged a lot. And I really do like the roster that they're putting together out there. So I'll leave it at that and let you guys, pick it apart for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you, Pat. I mean, positional value definitely is a thing. I mean, I don't mind, I would say, the Campbell pick. I think am more of a critic on the Gibbs pick. I think a lot of people had him going maybe to the second round. And then with Laporta, I would argue that they could have drafted Mayer, I think. I think Mayer was the 3rd tight end taken off, and I think Laporta was 2nd. So I would definitely put Mayer ahead of him there. But I do agree, at least with, I think, Branch and Hendon Hooker. I think those are great picks for them. So to me, it was like a mixed feeling. It was, a middle of the pack type of draft. I think, like you mentioned, people had dogged on them for that. But, if Gibbs can turn out to be, a Pro Bowl kind of player, which I think in this offense, he definitely can be. And, him being a nice combination with David Montgomery, I think that's, it could be a solid pick, but yeah, positional value, I think, is where I get lost in it. But the rest of the picks, I think we're okay, I think. So.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going. I get your point, Pat. Right? If you look at that, you're like, wow, we like have quality players that we drafted at each one of these positions. And particularly, I don't know where I land on Hendon Hooker, right? But if you think you can get a guy who can be a starter in the NFL and you can get him that late, like that's a good risk to be able to take, right? If he pans out, that's huge. I think my issue with it is kind of around positional value, right? Just from the standpoint of if nobody else is going to pick that guy, do like the Cardinals did and just trade down and get your guy, or like the Patriots always do, right? Like we got our guy, we don't want to pick him before we need to, so we'll just trade down and stockpile fourth, fifth, sixth round picks and still get the guy we want. Yeah, just because I feel like if you're picking a middle linebacker, in my opinion, in like the top 20, like I'm like, that guy better be like Luke Kuechly or something, you know. That's middle linebackers that go in the top 20. And maybe this dude is, I don't know a ton about him, but just kind of reading about it after, it was like, oh man, that was a stretch. Which is different than what we talked about before, where it's like, if you're an edge rusher, like you disrupt the game, right? I mean, look at that. That didn't, Micah Parsons went like 10th overall. It's like, this dude, you know, is going in the first round. Granted, maybe that's an unfair comparison because Micah Parsons would be a top 2 pick if he was going in the draft now. But and same thing with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think your comment around, I do think he can run inside the tackles, right? He's not just a guy you can split out, which there is a ton of value in being able to split out a running back now, right? Like if you can't catch the ball, you don't have near the value that you do if you're kind of multi-dimensional like that. But I don't know, man. I think Gibbs is really good. I'm curious to see because I feel like, I don't know, Gibbs, I don't think he's like Alvin Kamara's level, but I think he's like closer to like a James Cook in my opinion, and probably a little quicker than Cook laterally, who was a second round pick last year. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. You know, we can all like talk about it like we talked about, but it remains to be seen on the field. But I'd agree with you from the standpoint, if you just look at like the people that they got at key positions, it's like, man, you got some good quality players. But the other thing I think, and maybe this is unfair, is that like I'm like, well, you had DeAndre Swift, and I know there was a lot of like swirl and just like kind of bad blood on the team there. It was like probably better for both parties just to get rid of him. I'm like, okay, well, you just picked a guy. Like, is Gibbs a huge upgrade over DeAndre Swift, right? Like, is that a massive upgrade? And I don't know if it is. I guess it remains to be seen. But
yeah. So I think my takeaway, you know, and I think the points that I do agree with is, let's say Gibbs for most folks was like, okay, this is definitely end of the first round or nearing second round. Same thing with Campbell. We're thinking top of the second round, something like that. Maybe they could have moved back, got a little bit of extra draft capital, and then went out and got their guy. I kind of just, you know, again, like when I look at the players, the first 5 they took, what if we took Branch, who was supposed to be a first rounder, and dropped him into the Gibbs slot and then moved everything back? You know, like, do you have that same reaction as like this Lions team, like had a terrible draft? I think a lot of people get, I think, too fascinated with, again, like picking the right position for, you know, the slot itself versus like what talent are you actually bringing back there? Because do you want the 4th D end or you want the first, you know, linebacker, let's say? I don't know. I don't know which player, if it's Jack Campbell or if it's Myles Murphy, who's going to end up being the best, you know, NFL player at the end of the day. But I feel like this kind of happens in fantasy drafts a lot, where it's like, hey, I got to go out and get that tight end, because once they hit that tier of the last of the 3 or 4 good tight ends, like I'm screwed. And sometimes you go out and you reach for that 4th or 3rd tight end, and it's like, at the end of the day, why didn't I just grab that, you know, wide receiver who is, you know, top 10, top 15 talent? It's like, I would have been a better team. So I get all the points. You like, fair enough. I'll take the hits, everything like that. But no, and I just look back and I just saw the talent. I was like, to me, I think those are a lot of gamers in there, and like they're already stacking on that Detroit team, which I think is going to be the team to beat. And that's a big statement coming from somebody who's followed the NFC North as long as I have, probably Wayne too and stuff.
Yeah, I think if I were the Lions, I probably would have picked, like, I don't know. I think by then some of the D linemen were gone, maybe Christian Gonzalez or something like that, because I know their quarterbacks in their secondary, I think they're like all on 1-year deals. So, you know, maybe a Christian Gonzalez might work there. But no, fair point. I think, you know, Branch, he was, I think, the number 1 safety, I believe, in the draft. So, you know, if he went in the second round there, like, you know, why not switch him up? I think he had a 1st-round grade for some of these other analysts. So, yeah, it's definitely a we'll see. I think kind of draft for the Lions there.